Today we're going to talk about framing for beginners and see how that would change the way we do a sketch from being complicated to take a more easier route by isolating and frame our sketch. Let's go. Oftentimes when we are out and about in a place like this for example is at Clementi market area, and it's just looks complicated, right? So we just need to find a way to frame it. Maybe the first frame we intended to frame something like this, full-on buildings with the umbrellas on the left and the market scene. It might look pretty cool for a beginner to try to attempt. My view is this is just far too complicated for a beginner to even try. It's just too complex. This is a waterlogged rendition of a possible sketch that you could do with a full-on sketch of the photo I show. It's possible to frame it this way. It will take quite some time, probably a couple of hours if you're a good fast sketcher. That's what it will take. But here's what I propose the beginners to look at, basically isolating a part of that full-on complex scene to something more manageable. In fact, I'll even suggest to frame it even further to just this, basically the ice cream stall, maybe the family buying ice cream, and that's it. So sketching the full complex scene, it's like running a marathon. I really don't think a beginning runner should run a full marathon without much practice. You should really practice in chunk, work your way up in terms of stamina, and basically work on 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, eventually building up to 42. In the same way, when you are beginning sketchers, you really should not try to run the full marathon on get-go, right? Break it down. If you have too many shapes and too complex a subject to tackle, you'll be very frustrated, just like a marathon runner that has not practiced but try attempting the marathon just from cold. You will run into all kinds of trouble. I'm putting down my sketch here in real time, just to let you see that actually I ignore a lot of things in my sketch. I basically capture the essence of it, and again, for beginners, really the attempt to do too many details and putting down too many little shapes and dots and whatnot, it actually serves as a detriment to the sketch itself. Now, the story here is very simple. There's a family buying ice cream. In fact, this ice cream stall, just like in most of these stalls in Singapore, they are from an era that is almost going to disappear. So in some way, it is still nostalgic for many of us to buy ice cream from these stalls because there are not many of them around, and I'm not sure they will get license extended beyond the current store holder. Anyway, I digress, right? So now if you look at what I'm trying to do, I put in some of the oblique lines. Oblique lines are generally very energetic. It's good to have oblique lines in your sketch. In this case, it is to dictate the spatial, the space where the store and the people are, vis-a-vis relative to each other. I'm using this paper, very interesting paper palette. It's basically color put on paper, and once it's dry, it's just a strips of colors. Anyway, it's quite interesting. It was given to me years ago by a friend. I've never used it, but this is coming out. It came out because I was cleaning my room and I found it in a corner somewhere. The color is pretty intense. I actually don't know the brand, so don't ask me what and who made it, because it was a gift from somebody. I think they bought it from India during their vacation. They saw it and they bought it for me because they knew I was a sketcher. Anyway, as you can see, I ignored the brand walls. I just put the colors, and I have dots of red all around, and basically simplifying the way I lay down my color. It's not going to be very complex. I'm not going to bother too much about the shadows and so on, but it's just going to be illustrative to show you that actually a simple sketch like this could take no more than say 10 minutes. As I'm recording this in real time and I'm showing you in real time, you can see that actually it is literally not more than 10 minutes. One of the other things that you want to be careful is to use enough water. Remember, it is watercolor. That's what the medium I choose. It's not gouache or acrylic. And one of the most beautiful thing about watercolor is the soft edges and the fluffy color as it dissipates into the wet background, or the backdrop. So use it extensively because it is a beautiful part of watercolor. Do not be shy with it. And of course, you're contrasting between the sharp edges and the soft edges, making it more interesting, and just to sort of give you that watercolor feel for the sketch. Lots of primary colors in this sketch: the red, yellow, blue, green. Green is not quite part of the primary, but it is close secondary color. And then at the background, I try to mute it, and I use a negative space of the person selling the ice cream, darken the background to make the white pop. Eventually you'll see the torso, and that's pretty much it. So I try to give it a sense of 3 dimension by putting down the background, which is neutral, and the very bright all the primary colors that makes the sketch pop into 3 dimension, if you like. Well, after all, most of our sketch is to give a sense of 3 dimension from a 2 dimension piece of paper. Once you lay down the most of the color scheme, the remaining sort of touches, essentially they are to make the sketch more 3D. You might want to consider putting down a bit of shadows and things like that. So the remainder of the sketch really is just to fill in the tiny details, the little bit more background, give it a bit of texture, give some sense there are figures at the back that you can't quite see clearly, blur out objects and so on. Well, again, the blur stuff at the back and the sharp stuff in front will give it a sense of distance as well, or space. And then as you sketch, you are really just be mindful that you're trying to recreate something in 3 dimension, but you are working on a 2-dimensional surface paper, that is. So now I'm just going in and put in a little bit of shadow, and shadow, as you know, create forms, and forms are what makes the sketch look 3-dimensional. Some of the lines I'm making is really just to again contrast, like this case. It contrasts with the pen lines, and it also gives it a sense of distance as well, as it try to depict the space, the buildings, the lines, and things that will basically give you a connotation of space. I think it's quite important to learn to put these lines down with confidence, because it does gives you a lot of leeway. If you put it down confidence, you can make a little bit of mistakes, but if you put it in a tentative measure, you have to be super accurate in order to make it believable. But if you put it down in confidence, it actually allows you to make some mistakes, and that's okay. Alright, no big deal. So that's it, this sketch. I hope you enjoy it, but I also hope that you learn that you take on as much as you can based on your skill level, and not frame it in such a way that it's too complex that you're like a marathon runner, that when you're ready you can run a full 42 or beyond, but that's because when you're ready.